everything began on October the 7th. Yeah, tell me about that, what you think of that as well.
It's the beginning of history. And, you know, and now as we speak, the hospitals of northern Gaza are under attack. CNN is not showing these images from inside the hospitals of doctors being handcuffed, blindfolded, humiliated, babies being taken from intensive care units and incubators to other wings of the hospital as they're under attack by Israelis. This is the product of American propaganda deployed by the Pentagon and White House, claiming that there are underground bunkers, that the hospitals are doubling as military bases. Their intelligence assessments are essentially recycled Israeli propaganda. And we saw the same thing take place after October 7th with the White House green lighting Israel's genocidal military operation in the Gaza Strip on the basis of lies, deceptions, and distortions of half-truths spun straight out of Netanyahu's office and into the mouth of Biden, starting with the 40 beheaded babies lie. But one of the greatest lies that hasn't been unpacked yet, which I delved into at the Gray Zone, was what actually took place on October 7th, and raising the question of how many Israelis were actually killed by the Israeli military using the same doctrine of disproportionate force and the indiscriminate use of heavy weapons that we're now seeing in the Gaza Strip. And it appears that the death toll was pretty high.
Yeah, because all we hear from the politicians in NATO countries is October the 7th is when Hamas opened fire on innocent people. I mean, in fairness, many of them may well have been IDF reservists because they were Israeli citizens, but they were partying by the siege wall. And this was nothing to do with Israeli on Israeli fire.
Well, first of all, we now know from official Israeli statistics and confirmed deaths published by Haaretz that at least 50% of those killed were on military bases at the time. They were Israel's Gaza division, which was enforcing the siege of Gaza, active duty soldiers in uniform. They were the main targets of the Hamas commando division, their elite units. And U.S. media Western media never showed the video shot by Hamas and Islamic Jihad commandos by GoPro cameras of them killing these soldiers who had been previously killing them in many military operations. They turned to the killing of civilians or Israeli non-combatants in order to create political space for what was to come next, the Israeli operation inside Gaza. And the Israelis assisted them by providing images which are now seen on websites that the Israeli Foreign Ministry is promoting, like Hamas-massacre.com, which show extremely grisly images. Now, it's clear that in the attempt to take captives, Hamas militants did kill civilians. They were shot with Kalashnikovs. Some may have been killed with grenades. Those were the only weapons they carried. But if you look at the images of, for example, the homes in Kibbutz Be'eri, which was one of the main sites of hostage standoffs, these homes look like many of the homes in the Gaza Strip, which I've personally seen covering the 2014 assault on Gaza. Totally destroyed, cooked. Entire families were actually found in these homes, Israeli families, under rubble, as Palestinian families are now being found in Gaza. If you look at cars which were fleeing the Nova Electronic Music Festival, these cars were completely charred, melted, and many of the bodies that were found inside were also charred. And all of these images were taken and presented to Western media in various screenings and through these websites as casualties of Hamas's savagery, that they burned people alive, that they burned entire families alive. And what's absolutely clear and confirmed is that the Israeli military shelled these homes in Kibbutz Be'eri with tanks under orders from the top to, as one kibbutz security coordinator named Tuval Eskapa put it, to shell the homes on top of their occupants, even if they were Israeli. And we can go through so many other testimonies produced in Hebrew media, which I synthesized in my report, to show a systematic campaign of friendly fire ordered from the top of the Israeli military to prevent Hamas militants from taking captives into the Gaza Strip.
Is that what Netanyahu means by, when all of this is over, we'll go through about the events on October the 7th? But that still doesn't even explain why it is that at the State Department briefings, you have been at them, journalists do not ask why this phrase beheadings, the phrase rape, used at the UN Security Council. I don't know what you have to say about that accusation, why these words, obviously trigger words, are being used, and as you say, while the horrors of real incubators are on show to the world in social media.
Rape, gang rape, burning people alive. Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, testified before the Senate that Hamas cut the feet off of children. There's no basis for any of this. The real story should have been enough for them to have been able to justify their case. But they needed to go further because they were planning to attack the entire civilian population. And the White House has accepted this. For example, I debunked one new claim of rape put on this Hamas massacre site, which shows a naked woman who had been stripped and killed. This was a photograph likely of a Kurdish female fighter that has been online since at least 2022. I found
and what was it tweeted out as evidence by an Israeli?
The Israeli Foreign Ministries promoted it as Hamas rape. But if you actually look at the website that I found it on, look at the metadata, it first appeared in June of 2022. I found tweets of this image from later in 2022. So there's no way that this could have happened after October 7th.
And they deleted, the Israeli Foreign Ministry deleted this after you pointed this out.
Yes, and then you have Yasmin Porat's testimony. She was a woman who escaped the Nova Music Festival, headed to Kibbutz Be'eri, then was holed up in a home during a hostage standoff. She testified to Israeli public radio that everyone who was killed among the Israelis in that home during the standoff was killed by Israeli special forces in what she called crossfire. Undoubtedly, they killed everyone except for the one Hamas commander who was her captor who surrendered. And then they fired 2 shells into the house for good measure, making sure everyone was dead. Among those who were killed, according to Israeli Channel 12, was a child who Naftali Bennett, Israeli member of Knesset, former prime minister, said was actually burned to death by Hamas. This is a confirmed kill by the Israeli military, spun out by the former Israeli prime minister as evidence of Hamas savagery. There are so many cases of this. There's a website, October7th.org, where I just found a testimony by a woman who said that she had been on a tuk-tuk, a rickshaw, with several other captives and Gaza residents who may not have even been with Hamas. This is another element we can talk about.
Well,
and this tuk-tuk was hit not hit by Hamas. Hamas didn't kill the people on it. It was hit by an Apache helicopter Hellfire missile, and she was the lone survivor. There are so many cases like this, and we can just look at the testimony of these Apache helicopter pilots to understand why that took place.